Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike the Cranky Fan.
Oh, good morning, Grump. Breakfast with the Giants today. I am I am in my old bedroom of my parents' house down in Florida, coming back from a late night of the game one of the Rays ALDS game. So, for all you Yankee fans out there who are in the middle of their off season, we will take care of Boston for you. Don't worry. But yeah, this is like being 18 years old in high school, still being in your parents' house. So it's very strange. So. Yeah, we got to do this early because I got back at an ungodly hour, and it's an even more ungodly hour this morning. But we are here for you doing God's work, and is talking about our favorite football team, the New York Football Giants.
That's right, it's Friday morning. I'm wearing my tennis t-shirt and I'm ready to talk about football. Um, this is officially Dallas Hate Week, and I posed the question to Twitter because I was kind of wondering who the Giants' biggest rival is. Is it the Cowboys or is it the Eagles? Like, does this matchup, or like, are you fired up about this game?
Oh, of course. I hate Dallas. I don't know. I might personally hate the Eagles more because I just think their fan bases are just a bunch of punks. They've adopted that loser mentality that city has, and they kind of almost revel in it. And they've taken it to an extreme. But Dallas is the ultimate bandwagon fan base. You're right
Mm-hmm.
up there with your non-New York living Yankee fans, your Laker fans, you know Notre Dame fans. I mean, we've been to Giant Stadium when the Cowboys have been horrible, and we've seen
Mm-hmm.
hardly any Cowboy fans, and the slightest sniff of being good, all of a sudden, you think you're in Arlington. And right now, we're at one of those classic peaks where everybody's writing the ticket to them to the Super Bowl. So, you know, this is where they are their most annoying.
Yeah, this is probably the oldest Dallas script I think there is. They go on a tear and beat up on some teams, and all of a sudden the Super Bowl talk starts to happen. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm, as somebody who's been to Arlington and met the fans in Texas versus the Cowboys fans that live in New York, New Jersey. Um, I found that the fans in Texas were a little bit more bearable. I mean, like, yeah, you get the obnoxious dude who's got the shoulder pads with the spikes on it, and he's got a gigantic spoon that he's doing this thing with. Of course, you've got that guy there. But generally speaking, it was a pretty mild-mannered, just regular football crowd when I was out there. And that was like week 1 versus Dallas. Like, that was a hype-up game. That wasn't just like a regular week, like, I don't know,
Right.
whatever. But yeah, out here, I mean, surrounded by, they're not even really football fans, I wouldn't say. Like, I find them easier to ignore because they are bandwagon idiots. And
They're front runners. Yeah.
yeah, I feel almost nothing when I'm around idiots. But the Eagles fans
Yeah.
are actually like incite something primal and violent inside of me.
Yeah.
that I that to me is the bigger matchup. But I mean, I still feel pretty. I mean, every time they put a shot of Jerry Jones up there, it's going to get a reaction out of me internally and things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, there's two types of Cowboy fans who live in the New York area. I mean, obviously, there's a very large bandwagon contingent who are, they're just killing time before LeBron James starts playing again in the winter.
mm,
And then there's people about my age, the lost generation of fans when the Giants and the Jets were awful, in their formative fan base years, and, back in the late 70s, early 80s, when you didn't have Sunday ticket and Thursday night games and Monday night games where you only saw either a bad Giant team, a bad Jet team, or the Cowboys on every week, or the Steelers. So you have a large population of people in the northern New Jersey, New York area who just became Giant fans, who became Cowboy fans because the local alternatives sucked.
mm.
And now they become my age, and now they have kids, and now they have those kids have been brainwashed by their parents, and you get a lot of guys who sound like they're more from, Newark than they are from Lubbock, and it's kind of funny and kind of sad. It's kind of sad that the Giants and the Jets lost, an important part of the population that should be their own fans right now. But it is what it is.
Yeah. I guess I'm jazzed up about this game. I mean, so the headlines coming into this are, Dallas has been on a tear last 3 weeks, and Giants, started off really bad and, took it to the Saints when I guess nobody picked them to. So we get this division matchup comes in, and you've got those headlines going into it. I don't know. I guess I'm pretty fired up for this. I think.
Sure.
I guess one of the things about this matchup is like, it's almost always like week 1 or week 2, and then week 16, week 17. I guess this case week 18. Kind of situation with the Cowboys. So like it almost feels like the hype for it is forced, right? It almost doesn't feel organic because it's like week 1 or week 2. I'm excited for football and it's Cowboys week, and then you get right down to it, week 17, 16, 18. You're looking at major divisional play there. I mean, if it were playing the Eagles or Washington, would have almost the same significance at that time. So yeah, I guess. Yeah, I would say the more recent history makes the Eagles a more hated fan base for me, and that game to mean a little bit more to me, especially since they tend to take over the friggin' stadium, especially recently. So
Yeah. I mean, this game to me, it's a classic, NFL tease game to me, where, what are the Giants? Are the Giants of the 3-game set where we were, wondering if we should just jump off the ledge and never watch football again? Or are they the Giants of last week where we saw hope for the future in the quarterback and the playmakers and, things like that? I'm looking at this much more as a kind of a do or die game, and not so much from the rivalry aspect, but just from the glass half full in me says, they win this game, they're a game out of first with a quarter of the season done, with a division win on the road.
Mm-hmm.
The glass half empty side says, well, they lose this, it's back to 1-4, and it's back to forget it. Season's over. Let's have these existential questions about our existence. So, the rivalry part, I'm not really even thinking about this week. To me, this is a business trip. This is no different if we were having to play, the Rams next week, for example, or something. It's part of a gauntlet of a stretch of the schedule right now we have to deal with. And, the NFL always throws you these curveball games where you think you know something, and the second you do, you don't. And, Dallas, I came into the season, still believing that, their defense is awful. And I know they made some nice pickups in the draft and free agency and stuff, but, I still got to see it to believe it. And not that we're the barometer of that or anything, but I just think the Cowboys are just playing well right now. I don't know if it's an indication they're necessarily a good or a great team. I think at the end of the day, their record might be inflated because of this division. Still stinks. So let's not go crazy, go into Vegas and getting Super Bowl tickets for them if they end up finishing 11-5. This team could also or 11-6 rather. This team could still be a slightly sub 500 team. I'm not sold on still on the defense yet, and as good well as Dak is playing, can they sustain that over a 17-game week season? I don't know, and I need more evidence and proof of that. And like we always try to say, don't let the last thing you watch be what kind of influenced you for the rest of the time. So I don't know if this Giant team is that barometer of that, but yeah, this is an important game, and I'm hyped up for the fact that this time last week I thought the last 3 months would be meaningless, and now there's a slight little crack in the door for meaning.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This is sort of a do or die moment, and yeah, it's Dallas, but it's a division opponent. You lose this game, and we're down to 1-4. We've got a tough stretch ahead of us, but also now we're 0-2 in the division. So yeah, I think I agree. This is just sort of their backs were against the wall last week, right? 0-3, can't go 0-4. Just can't do it. And they went 1-3. Right now where they're they've got to win again. They've got to come out of this 2-3 and look at it that way, because they do have some tough games ahead, but they're saved by the fact that they're not division games. So
Yeah,
some of them aren't even conference games. So.
And let's be blunt. There's no wild card team coming out of this division. This is just like last year, where your only ticket to the playoffs is winning this division. And if we lose, we're 3 out again. And so, if we win, we're 1 out, and I think the whole division has hope all of a sudden. So this is really an important game for the Eagles and the Redskins, or the Washington football team, as much as it is for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're carrying the weight of the division on our shoulders right now. Not that we give a damn about those teams, but that's kind of the reality for the division right now.
And it looks like the Giants are going to be playing without Shepard again, without Slayton again, and looks like without Peppers this time, who is also dealing with a hamstring injury. Peppers is going to really hurt. I expect that we're going to see a bit of Julian Love in this game. Dallas, like you said, they might just kind of shit out the second half of the year and be somewhere hovering around 500 by the end of the year. And it seems that the trajectory of this team has been tied to the health of the offensive line, and they've been nicked up. Some guys have left, some guys have retired. But when Tyron Smith is out for stretches of time, Dallas is a very different team. So I completely believe that, but it just goes to the physicality of this Dallas team. They get CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson or whatever, and they put up 40 points, and you have all these highlights of Dak Prescott throwing 40-yard bombs. But it all comes down to the physicality of this Dallas team. They will weaken a team with the run game with Ezekiel Elliott. It's something you absolutely have to respect and then hit you over the top. But if you can dislodge or dismantle their ability to just ride the rock with Ezekiel Elliott, suddenly we see a Dallas team that's completely different. And we have evidence of this over the last couple of years now, as Tyron Smith in particular, his health has been not so good, but the offensive line in general has struggled a little bit. I mean, and that's going to sound like duh, right? Of course the offensive line starts falling apart, the team's going to fall apart. But for Dallas, it's so much more true. Dak Prescott has a tendency when things start to break down to throw the stupid ball, to not find the open guy, to keep his eyes maybe too down to the ground, to try and run, to try and do too much. There are guys who are escape artists that can manage that. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. Dak Prescott isn't that level, and that's kind of always been my argument, that he's just a good quarterback. He's not much more than that, but
you've increased your feeling for Dak, because we've argued on this show many times that you didn't even think he was that good of a quarterback.
I don't. He is in the absolute perfect scenario for a quarterback. He has some things that he is very good at, but I don't think accuracy is one that I would say is one of his. And sometimes his decision making, whatever. I'm not going to get into a Dak Prescott podcast again. Right. Nice try. But yeah. Jabrill Peppers would have been a big part in, controlling that line of scrimmage and filling the box and preventing Ezekiel Elliott from having 4 or 5 yard carries, 4 or 5 yard per carry. That is not going to be on the table, and I expect Julian Love probably is going to come in and fill that role a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I want to get back really quickly to it. You're talking about Sterling Shepard not playing, and I think a lot of Giant fans might be under that. Again, the last thing we saw, it's Kadarius Toney emerged, so that's not as big of a deal that Shepard is out. I think it's a tremendous deal. Mm-hmm. It was great that Kadarius got the snaps, got the touches, had the ability to flash and show what he can do. But he's still a rookie, and it's still only his 5th game. And over the first 3 games of the season, the best offensive player on this team was Sterling Shepard. We were saying on this show and in tweets that we thought he had taken the next step, and we thought he was looking, a little more twitchier than he had before, and just more reliable even than he was before. So let's not, fall victim to that last thing we saw itis and like, no big deal, he's not playing. That's a big problem, I think, still, that, this is an offense that's still trying to find its footing. We've seen some strides. We've seen Daniel Jones, who all of a sudden is the NFL golden boy this week, starting to take that next step. But losing a guy like Shepard to me is a big, big loss because, everything you said about Dallas is true about their offense, but right now that offense is cooking. Mm-hmm. And this is not going to be one of those games, I don't think, where it's going to be like the New Orleans game where it was 7-0 at halftime or whatever it was, and it was this just a grind to try to get to overtime. I think this very, very potentially could become a shootout, and if it's a shootout, you better have all your weapons, all of them, and losing him is a big loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were saying that Sterling Shepard looked good going back to the preseason. I mean, and training camp and things that we saw way back then. So he's been kind of on fire for a while now, and Daniel Jones likes to go to him also. I mean, he likes to look his way often. So yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think that Giants fans are falling victim to the Kadarius Toney is fantastic kind of situation there, and it's foolish, I think, to jump right into
or even Will John Ross calling. Even John, John Ross had that big bomb. I mean, I'm not relying on a guy like John Ross. I mean, that was great, the touchdown, but do you really think he's the guy who's going to get, multiple targets and multiple catches and be a consistent, reliable receiver? That's not my thought for a guy like him. So he's not replacing, what we're getting from a Sterling Shepard.
No, not at all.
That production on a consistent basis, absolutely not. So let's not overlook the fact of what Sterling Shepard has brought to the table, and we have a lot of weapons on this team now. I listened to one of the other podcasts. It might have been Patty's podcast saying, do we suffer from a problem of too many weapons? No.
not
never,
at all.
You never can. Depth is something that is required in this league, and we've seen it on this team in the last couple of years. The second you have an injury or two, you're going down to guys who are getting off the scrap heap. And we're not at that position, fortunately. But, let's not get crazy. But losing your most consistent, reliable receiver is a major problem.
Yeah, I don't want to be in the situation where we're calling up Peyton Hillis and having him join the team about 3 days before a game. So no, we don't suffer from too many weapons. If anything, this team suffers from lack of a ton of things.
A ton of things.
Yeah, really. Yeah, no, John Ross doesn't do anything that Sterling Shepard can do. They're completely different kind. But the other thing is that John Ross, his go route to either be open or clear an area for another person is not going to be something you can just run every play that he's out there. Like, they're going to have to develop some level of route tree for him, some level of integration with the offense. I know it was his first game back since all summer, it feels like, but
yeah, I mean, he's a gadget player, but a different type of gadget player than you normally think of. Like, Kadarius Toney's a gadget player. He'll run end arounds and he'll pass and he'll do this type of stuff. This guy's gadget is he just runs deep and runs very, very fast. Mm-hmm. And you might, with a gadget play, you might hit that once every 3 games and be happy. So that's not replacing what Sterling Shepard brings to the table.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, they're gonna have to. I think there's more there to develop with him. I think you can give him some slants, some slant and go. You can give him a route tree that works on his speed and just do a bunch of comeback routes and double moves and then just straight up stuff. I mean, he doesn't have to have a super developed route tree, but he can't just be a go route guy. And he's they haven't just yet, but primarily. All right, so in terms of this game, I guess the big headline going into this, right, is that the Cowboys cut Jalen Smith. Linebacker was drafted in the second round out of Notre Dame, had that devastating knee injury, I believe in a bowl game. I want to say it was super late in the year. Plummeted his draft spot, and there was some legitimate question as to whether or not he would even be able to play because the knee injury was so bad. And it has, in my opinion, affected him as a prospect. I mean, leading up to that injury, he looked like a first-round pick, solid, probably top 15 middle linebacker for a team, and fell all the way to the second round. That seemed early also, and he hasn't really played super well. But at the same time now, we're looking at a Cowboys defense that without him, and I understand that he's not great, but Micah Parsons, a rookie who, didn't even really play much last year, and Leighton Vander Esch are the big linebackers in this defense, and Keanu Neal is technically listed as a linebacker. Do you find that interesting?
I find it very interesting because he's a solid safety, at Florida and wherever he's been in the NFL with Atlanta and stuff. So yeah, it seems like they're kind of patchworking something in this defense, which was wretched last year, and still I don't know if I can completely trust going forward this year.
Yeah, I don't know. They have what they've done, in my opinion, by cutting Jalen Smith now, is they've weakened the strongest group of this defense. I mean, the back end of this defense isn't anything. I mean, they're building it. They've been building it slowly, but it's still pretty weak. I mean, I'm not too worried about Anthony Brown and Trayvon Diggs. I understand how many interceptions he has so far this year, but for him, it's boom or bust. He's either getting completely burned or he's coming up with a pick. And some of those picks also are just kind of fluky. So
it was interesting. So it sounds like they cut him because they, as the story started coming out, that the Cowboys wanted him to waive his, I guess insurance rights or something for 2022. And he was like, screw that. So it's interesting, the behind the scenes of why they cut him. It wasn't necessarily a football decision. It seems more like a business decision. So
that's weird.
Yeah, quite weird.
Why did they want him to waive that?
I don't know. I mean, I just saw I think it was Schefter tweeted it yesterday about that. I didn't dig too deep into it, but I thought that was just interesting. If those are the reasons why, who knows? I mean, that could give some insight into really what his health really is.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is interesting. I mean, either way, all right. So it sounds like it was a business decision. Well, it doesn't sound like a smart depth chart decision, even if he isn't playing well. They've now, in my opinion, weakened the strongest part of their defense. I'm not worried too much about their secondary, and I'm not worried at all about this defensive line. Not at all. I mean, no more than I am with this Giants offensive line with any team. So I find that really, really interesting, and it's going to be especially bad. Dorrance Armstrong, I guess, technically right now, is their best defensive end, or even defensive lineman, besides maybe Randy Gregory, and he still hasn't practiced this week with an ankle injury. So now you're without DeMarcus Lawrence with a broken foot, I think. You have Dorrance Armstrong's probably not playing. You really just have Randy Gregory and Terrell Basham, Osa Odigizua. Like, none of these guys are really that scary. It was really that linebacker group that used to be a problem. Even if Jalen Smith wasn't the best of them, you mix him in, you get a rotation of the functional guy who's smart and isn't often in the wrong area. This is a chance for the Giants to score some points, I think. I was worried about the idea of DeMarcus Lawrence lining up opposite Nate Solder.
I was worried about the possibility of you lining up against Nate Solder, to be very honest.
Yeah, really. And now the only one really to worry about is Randy Gregory, and he's kind of more of a speed rush guy. He's not that developed. He spent most of his career, on NFL banned lists and whatever suspension lists. So he has not really developed the way he probably should have out of college. I feel a little bit okay. And if the Giants want to win this game, no matter what they do defensively, they need to score points on offense. 27 points in overtime is still not a huge amount of points. I mean, we should be looking for that 30-point benchmark game after game. And if you want to beat the Cowboys, that's probably where you're going to have to. I think it's only the Chargers were like the only ones to keep them under 25 points this year. Or whatever.
you almost have word for word in my notes what my keys to the game was. Let me do a real quick postscript to the Jalen Smith thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to be owed $9.2 million next year, which was guaranteed for injury. The Cowboys said if they eliminated the guarantee, the 9.2, they wouldn't cut him. He refused. They cut him. So there you go.
Weird.
Very weird. But getting to the matter at hand for this week, I completely agree with you. I think we saw a little loosening of the reins with the play calling and some of the decision making last week, and we saw the potential that this offense can flourish and the potential that this team can score points. We saw 2 quick strikes drives. They scored in one play each.
Mm-hmm.
The question will be, are we going to revert to our tendencies to be conservative, play to the, not to make mistakes, to do something like play like that? If we do against a team like Dallas, it could get ugly really quickly. I think if we continue this kind of, changing of the guard a little bit to let Daniel Jones, play his game, open up, take shots, be aggressive, we could certainly win a shootout with this team. I think, they may have some of their better weapons, may have a higher skill set than ours, but we just said 10 minutes ago, do the Giants have quote unquote too many weapons? We can spread this ball around all over the place. I mean, we haven't even talked about Saquon Barkley yet,
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about our receivers and things. And I think if this game opens up, I think we have a real shot to win it. But we're not going to win this game if we're, punting on 4th and 4 from the 39-yard line, or, just trying to limit mistakes or trying to pin Dallas back. I think that's a recipe for disaster, especially on the road. So I think we have to play like a team that's 1-3, knows our season's on the line, and say F it and go for it.
Absolutely. And one other thing that you can traditionally drive the ball downfield, which is what we've been screaming for a while now. But obviously the run game is a big part of this team. It's a big part of this offense. Anytime you draft Saquon Barkley, it's going to be a big part of the offense. But you have Daniel Jones as well. This is a good team to run zone reads against. They're not very disciplined, and they're not very good on the edge either. You have some other options here. I mean, Sam Darnold ran for 2 touchdowns against the Cowboys.
Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and he's not unathletic, but he's not nearly as athletic as Daniel Jones. So, I mean, you have some options here. You can keep running just zone read runs or RPOs, or you have the speed now with guys like Kadarius Toney and John Ross and Evan Ingram, even, and Saquon Barkley, to be running some quarterback option. Assignment football is really good against a team whose edge guys are not their starters, and they're not even that good to begin with. I would like to see some more variety in what we use Daniel Jones as a runner for. I think an option play mixed into his zone read stuff is really smart.
And variety doesn't necessarily mean just throw out the the trick playbook and
just keep adding to it.
Yeah, I mean, variety means just not running the same base plays over and over again. It means utilizing a quarterback to his full skill set and all the tools that he has. Not turning the guy into Jamel Holloway or some, running quarterback from the 80s, but we're talking about, we know what makes his special sauce and what he does, and let's tap more into that, especially against teams that we have an advantage over. And like to your points about, on the outside and stuff, let's use what he has and bring it to the table and let's go.
All right, let's switch to the other side of the ball, because this is the side that we should be more worried about, right? Is the Giants on defense and Dallas on offense. I'm worried about this. I'm legitimately worried about this, and it's not really so much about Dallas. They're a good team. I'm not going to downplay them, but I'm worried about this Giants team, because dating all the way back to the preseason, I started watching their run defense and thinking, like, what is going on here? Like, New England is gashing, like, on the ground. Like, I don't even think we were touching running backs until they were 6 yards upfield already. And it hasn't gotten better. And I think that a lot of that has to do with Dalvin Tomlinson. just not being here. I don't know that he's really influenced too much of what the Giants' pass rush problems are right now, but he's definitely been missed against the run, and it can't happen this game. So you have two problems here with Dallas. You have to respect and stop Ezekiel Elliott in the run game, but that kind of falls secondary to stopping the big play with guys like CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper on offense.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think for years the threat was always Ezekiel first, and I don't think this offense is stop Ezekiel first. It's stopping the big weapons on the outside, but that doesn't mean that Ezekiel isn't the threat anymore. That he still is a very dangerous threat.
Exactly.
Giants have a real problem. When we just talked about, they had a couple of one play drives last week, and now we want them to open up the offense more, but the risk with this is, if this turns into a shootout and we're scoring quick or quicker, we don't want this defense on the field for long stretches. And we saw it in New Orleans last week. They started running out of gas. And, if this team, if this defense is on the field a long time, whether because they can't get their own stops or our offense is starting to hum in a shootout with them, I'm worried about the fourth quarter. And I'm worried about that, that one drive that the Cowboys may all of a sudden decide to run 7 times, and then you see Zeke get 6 yards, 7 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, 7 yards, that type of thing, and they start, leaning and wearing this team down, which may be tired. So I think a big indicator for me in this game is, let's see what time possession is after the first quarter. If we see something like, Dallas gets the ball first, and they have a nice, pretty long drive and score, we 3-and-out-ish, or maybe get one first down to get the ball back again, and it's one of those 10-5 first quarter time possession things, I think we're in big trouble. I think if we keep it pretty close as we can to 7.5, and in that range, I think we have a real shot in the fourth quarter. But that's going to be a very big thing for me looking at early on.
Yeah, I think they're in trouble because I think they have to stop the big play first. But that doesn't mean exactly what you said. Like that doesn't mean eventually what's going to happen is you're going to be put in a pincer. Is that you're going to have to respect Ezekiel Elliott at the same time you're preventing the big play, and that's going to put a strain on the defensive line because the linebackers, the secondary, they can't come in and help. You can't stack the box against Elliott. Every play. There's too much talent on the outside. So that means the guys up front have to win. And they haven't been winning against inferior offensive lines at all. They have not. This is going to be scary because for me, I'm not too worried about, I look at James Bradbury and Adoree Jackson, and I'm expecting some Rodarius Williams in this matchup, versus Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Wilson. I'm okay with that matchup. I feel fine. I think that those are a tough group of wide receivers, but we have a tough group of DBs, and I think that it would be a good match to watch.
Who are better than they've shown.
Yeah.
Just over time, they are better than we've seen. We've seen underwhelming performances this year, but I don't think, that data sample of those last couple of games doesn't tell the whole story of what their potential and their talents are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's true for the whole team. But what I don't feel comfortable in a straight-up matchup is, the defensive line up against this offensive line, against any offensive line with Ezekiel Elliott. Just because we've, quite frankly, they haven't won as a defensive line against offensive lines. And then on top of that, nobody is tackling on this team. And it's not a new problem from last week just because all of you noticed that Taysom Hill could run through them. It's been going on for weeks now, the bad tackling. It has not been good. I keep writing it in my notes week after week. I know that, after the Saints game, we got the press conference and it's like, oh, we're going to work on tackling this week. Like, I hope that wasn't your big clue that you need to work on it. It's been going on for weeks now. And,
Are you noticing when you're watching your film of everybody else that it's similar, or is this more Giant specific? Because it just seems like the league in general, and also watching so much in college, it's the same thing. It's just the open field tackling has been atrocious. I watch, obviously I watch Florida games every Saturday, and that's my biggest gripe right now on the defense is just the open field tackling is just a lack of fundamentals and a lack of execution. And so do you think this is mainly a Giant specific problem, or is it just the whole league is having this issue?
I think it is a league issue. I think it's a football issue. As players try to constantly adjust how they tackle to conform to the rules, in addition to just rules in place for practice time and how much they can work on tackling and how much is allowed in practice and that sort of thing. I think it creates
Right.
a league problem, sure, but it's certainly a bigger problem on the Giants than than it's been in recent years, certainly
Right.
more than last year. If there was one thing they did well last year was that they would all corral to the ball and get the stop wherever the pass was, whatever. There was very
Which
little
was
yards
shocking.
after the catch. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it was just the bread and butter of this defense was sure you can catch it, but you're going to get tackled right there. I mean, that's not really happening anymore. And I think really, part of it is Blake Martinez is a sure tackler. He's out for the year. But they weren't really tackling well before that. And I think part of that is the
Yeah.
defensive line isn't actually getting off of their blocks when they're trying to make a tackle. So they've only got one arm free half the time because they're not winning. This defensive line isn't winning. And I think that's where Dalvin Tomlinson comes into the picture as being part of the problem for this defense not being very good at tackling.
Right.
Danny Shelton was kind of signed to be his replacement in the run game, and they have Austin Johnson in there as your big man pass rusher. And Danny Shelton, I've been kind of waiting for to have his big moment, his big game, and he's just at this point. I'm resigned to find that he is not good. It's a 300 plus pound man that can't even beat a one-on-one block with a center, and I don't know how that happens. He
That's
doesn't
not
just
good.
lose; he loses badly. I mean, he'll be about 4 yards upfield. So that I think is part of the biggest part of that problem. But they have to find a solution. I don't want to hear that the free agent you were prepared to let walk and one guy getting hurt has plummeted this team's tackling
Altered
ability.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in this game especially, they're going to have to figure out eventually how to tackle Ezekiel Elliott at or around the line of scrimmage without a safety in the box or without having all the linebackers screaming downhill. They
Yeah,
were going to have to cover the big play and Zeke.
I don't want to see this game turn into one of those every time it's 3rd and 2. He's getting 3-4 yards every single time because it's like watching a game like that where you just get that hopeless feeling of, all right, we got 3rd down again and we're not stopping him.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, there he is and relatively unscathed going past the 1st down marker. So again, I think that still goes back to my previous theory of what we do in the first quarter and early second quarter is going to determine how that's going to go in the 3rd and 4th quarter with with this with the defensive line and just being a lot of snaps and a lot of time on the field. So I think we'll know early how this game is going to play out, I think.
And how do you think it's going to play out? Why don't you give me your prediction?
Well, it was great they won last week, and I'm glad that we got off the schneid, but losers still lose. And I just have this bad feeling that, I mentioned before we need to win. Obviously, time possession battle, keep this defense off the field. And I think that a lot of it's predicated on, can we get an early lead and have them play from behind? If you do that, you make them a little more one-dimensional. And I get it that one dimension is one of the best units in the league right now, their passing game with their receivers. But I think our only chance to win is getting away from our weaknesses and having play our strengths. And I think the secondary is still the strength of this team on the defensive side. And I'm almost willing to take my chances more and not having to worry so much about a run game punishing us and pounding us in submission. I think this game is going to be more of a shootout. Will we be leading for most of it and have them coming back? I don't think so. Probably not. But I think you're going to see a game where Daniel Jones again throws at least 35, 40 passes a game and has some pretty gaudy numbers again. This is not going to be the same game as the Saints game last week. I think this is going to be much more open. I just think Dallas has too many weapons, though, and I think at this moment they're a better team than us, and I think we will look better overall. I think the last 2 weeks are it could take us off the ledge for thinking this is the worst team ever and just poorly coached and all that stuff. But we're still catching Dallas at the wrong time. I think we're not ready to win that shootout with them. I think we're going to lose 35-28, but I think overall going to feel like this team is playing better, continuing an upward trend of this team being able to compete. We have a very hard schedule coming up. This loss will probably, very, very, very close, if not effectively ending our hopes of making the playoffs. But I think it'll be an entertaining game. There'll be lots of highlights. There'll be some frustration because, they're making highlight plays as well. But in the end, I think we lose, but we don't look bad in doing it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm thinking this game's going to go. I think, but like you said, if they win this game, if the Giants do win this game, that's a huge statement about what this team is, what they can be, what Joe Judge is, what Daniel Jones is. I mean, I can't imagine that they win this game and it's some slugfest of 16-13. I mean, I can't even picture that in my head.
Yeah, it's an important Joe Judge game, I think. It's one of those where if we're going to win this game, Joe Judge can't think like Joe Judge. We're not going to win this game by, like I said, punting on the 38-yard line or things like that. We're going to have to go for it. We're going to have to be aggressive. We're going to have to we're going to have to maximize each of our possessions because they have the potential to score on any play.
Mm-hmm.
And leaving points on the field and, playing for the field position thing and all that stuff, that's not going to work in a game like this. You have an opportunity to put points on the board any way possible. Take advantage. Go for it. Get out of your comfort zone because if we get into a shootout, we're going to lose. We have to score to match scores. So that's my advice for Joe Judge is, go against your basic instincts. And if this team you feel has a sense to get that first down on a 4th and 2, go for it. Instead of, kicking the field goal and going for it, go for it.
I think this game ends 28-24 Dallas. I think that they do a pretty good job to neutralize a lot of the point scoring, and I think that they keep it close, but they just don't score enough points, and it's just kind of, I haven't seen enough of the offense being all the way opened up or consistently back-to-back weeks yet, so I have no reason to believe that there won't be the frustrations in the red zone that I continue to see week after week, or those things that they happened in the Saints game, but they played well enough against a team that isn't as good as Dallas to make up for it. That's not going to be the case, and until it actually is the drive or the play that loses the game for them, I don't anticipate them getting away from those issues.
Yeah, I still don't have faith in this team in the red zone yet. I mean, they scored two touchdowns last week on quick plays and big plays.
Mm-hmm.
That's great and all, but something, those opportunities don't happen that often. You're going to get into the red zone a lot more,
mm-hmm.
and we can't see the things that plagued us in the Atlanta game. The false starts and the dumb penalty and the wasting first down on a simple inside handoff or something. This team has to get better in the red zone. In a game like this, there might be a lot of opportunities in the red zone. We can't be in the red zone 5 times and have 1 touchdown out of it. That's not going to work.
Philadelphia is traveling to Carolina, 1:00 game. We're at the 4:25, so we get to watch the division play out beforehand. How do you feel about Philadelphia at Carolina?
The end is near for Philly. I think, they're not a good football team. Carolina, in spite of losing last week, I still think it's solid. I think Carolina rolls in this game.
I don't even think it's close. Philadelphia might be worse than I thought. New Orleans is traveling now to Washington. How do we feel about that game?
Interesting game. What time is that? A 1:00 game as well?
That is.
That's tasty. Let's see if Washington's for real. I mean, I'm not saying New Orleans. We saw them last week. They're not world beaters, but that's a team that could give, a team we all think, in this whole division, they're about a 500 level team. And if they're going to be serious about winning divisions, it's a game they have to win.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they will. I think New Orleans is going to come in and win. I think Jameis is such a crapshoot, whether he's going to be really good or really bad. I think we're seeing that Washington's defense is overrated.
Yep.
And I just, I don't like rooting for Jameis or even counting on Jameis, but I think he's going to have a good game. I think New Orleans goes in and wins.
Yeah, I don't think Sean Payton likes to lose, and I think that he has spent the last 7 days concocting a perfect plan to win against Washington, fix whatever errors he saw against us, and figure it out. Washington's dealing with their own thing also, where like their head athletic trainer, their like facility got raided by the DEA and all this other nonsense. It never seems to end down there.
It never does.
I agree with you. I think that Jameis is a crapshoot. We had decent Jameis last week. He wasn't bad, but
We had efficient Jameis, which is kind of weird. Yeah, we didn't have spectacular one. We didn't have, disgraceful Jameis. We had, we made plays and stuff, but it wasn't like highlight film Jameis.
Yeah, I think that New Orleans, I think they jump ahead early and Washington starts to close the gap, but too little, too late. And I think New Orleans win this game, which makes the Giants winning this all the more important, because if they can get a leg up on Washington, it puts them right in contention in the division. And so that's what I'm going to be rooting for.
This is going to be like Separation Sunday in the East. I mean, if Dallas wins and New Orleans wins, Dallas is getting some daylight between the two, and it might become a runaway. If even if Washington wins and we win, it's still that bunching. And then every game, I think there's 2 Dallas-Washington games still ahead. There's a lot of division games to be played. All you want is to shorten the season. If you're a bad team or a team, you just want to shorten the season. You just want to make it into, if we win this game, this will happen type of thing. And, this is week 5 already. And, you get by this and you're, not good at math. You're 5/17ths of the way. That's a lot less daunting than 17 games to go. So this is a critical week for us, the division, everything. Our sanity,
It's so silly because most teams lose more than 3 games per year, right? Just mathematically. So. Right. But you lose the first 3 and almost it feels like every single game is a must win. It's absolutely mathematically not true. And yet it has that feeling, whether it's momentum or just as a fan base, you feel invested and helpless because you can't do anything or whatever. But
most teams, don't lose 3 games a season, but most teams also don't have winning streaks of longer than 3 games during the regular season. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. It's not the question of, we can make up those wins during the season, but all of a sudden we're not talking about a 17-game season anymore. You're talking about a 14-game season or an 11-game season. So the odds of that, making up the ground that quickly over like a 4 or 5 game winning streak are very rare. And you're talking about teams that are kind of crappy and just, let's be generous and say 500 level-ish. That means by nature you're winning and you're losing. You're not having these, usually 500 teams are not the result of winning 4 in a row and losing 4 in a row or something. It's you're consistently winning 1, winning 2, losing 1, losing 2, that type of thing. So that's when you lose 3 in a row, that's where it gets really disheartening, because it's very, very difficult for teams of our caliber to kind of make up for that.
Of course. All right, guys, we have the 425 game this Sunday, so we will see you then, and then we will have an episode recorded Monday night for your listening pleasure Tuesday morning. So follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, and of course at Just Giants Pod, and we will see you then. Go Giants.
Go Giants.